Hello. Right, okay. Not sure you got there, but I might have to edit that. Right, okay. So today we're going to move on from yesterday, which is, you put me off now, the theory, wasn't it? We're going to talk about hazard perception.
Yes, we've done a week or two, I've lost track really, of starting with ADI theory questions that catch PDIs out, and moved on to the trickier questions that our pupils sometimes struggle with. And we haven't really said anything about hazard perception, so we
No.
thought we would end this little mini series with a chat about hazard perception. I guess both from a pupil and an instructor point of view.
Yeah, I
PDI
tend to
point of view.
do more with PDIs doing hazard perception, and you tend to do more learners doing hazard perception. So it'd be interesting to see your take on it. So I go from my point of view with PDIs, and obviously everyone watching this, or most people watching this, would have been through the system or are going through the system at the moment, so you may agree or not agree. I tend to find that PDIs struggle with hazard perception, I think predominantly because they're experienced drivers and they press the button too early. The bottom line is they see the kid in the bike driving down the pavement, press the button because we all know he's going to cycle across, and then they miss any points because they're before the clicking window. Well, I think it's relevant to learners to a certain degree as well, but certainly more PDIs struggle with it than learners because learners don't have the experience, therefore don't click too early because they have to wait until they've hit the kid before they realise it's a hazard. So they tend to maybe get lower marks, not fives, but they don't get no marks. Does that make sense?
From a learner point of view, to put that into context, I would suggest that the people that struggle, the learners that struggle with it, are my sports people. Actually,
yeah.
the real natural drivers whose awareness and planning is pretty good, and they fall into the same category as those PDIs who are more experienced drivers.
Absolutely. I had a couple of brothers who were racing car drivers, and they struggled with it a bit for that reason, because they saw the hazard well before they saw the hazard. So what I tend to say, and this is relevant to learners as well, is put it back into the context of driving, because at driving, you don't separate it as an extra game or anything. Put it back into the context of driving. So what I tend to say is treat it like you're driving along the road and you see a potential hazard. Let's say the kid on the bike cycling down the pavement. It's potential, could happen. So we would check the mirror, just so if we got a lorry up behind us, we'd slow down a bit earlier just in case it developed. So we check the mirror. That would be the first click. Then the cyclist gets right near the edge of the curb and starts to come off the curb, or just gets right near the edge of the curb. We would probably start to cover the brake, or it's getting nearer the curb, let's say. You start to cover the brake.
Certainly off gas.
Yeah, off gas, cover the brake potentially. Then that's another click, because you're taking action. And then at the point where they cycle off and you actually brake, that's another click. That click is probably too late, or might get you a 1. The middle click is where the points are. First click is too early, but it gets you into the system. So you're thinking about it, you're thinking, right, he might be a hazard, so I'm just going to flag that, or definitely becoming a hazard now because he's cycling towards the pavement, towards the curb, going to press that, and that's where your 4s and 5s are. So, there's a lot of rumours, as there is with everything, and the rumour is you can't click too many times. You can click as many times as you like. I did it a number of years ago now, spoke to the guys when I did it, and talked to them and said, no, you can click as many times as you like. It's the rhythm that's the problem. The problem is some of the software out there does limit you number of times you can click, as in the practice software, because I've had people say, well, it stops me when I get to 20 clicks. The real software for the actual test doesn't. If you're clicking it lots and lots, like 20 or 30 times, it probably is a rhythm there as well. But if you use the system, check the mirror, off gas or cover brake, that's going to be different every time, because the hazard or potential hazard is moving at different speeds every time. Therefore, that's not going to be a rhythm. Whereas I see it sort of daily on forums and stuff where people say, well, click it once, count 1, 2, click it again, count 1, 2, click. That's a rhythm, and the system will pick up on that very early on, won't it? So, because you tie into driving, you can practice that when you're driving around. That's the important point. So you don't have to be in front of a computer with the PDI or the learner. You can just literally do it as you're driving along, and that, of course, develops hazard perception on the road, which is the whole point of the thing in the first place. So connecting the two things together, not making them separate identities, is what I would say.
I've had a lovely, was it a standard check or a part 3? I think it was a standard check that I watched, where the instructor was bringing in hazard perception to the theory, because the people was working towards their theory. I think the people might have failed a theory as well, so they were bringing it into the lesson, and they brought in that kind of MSPSL and hazard perception into the clicking. So at the point where there was a reason to slow down, he was encouraging the people rather than to commentary drive, but to say click. And how that was developed was the pupil would say click, and the instructor would have to guess what it was he was thinking was going to be the hazard, and it just worked. A lovely score for that as well, because it was relevant and it mixed the theory in with the practice as well. Made it real, brought it away from being a computer game.
Yeah, real and different, isn't it? And that's certainly with the stand check or POF. If you can do something like that, then that makes an awful lot of difference. If the examiner thinks, well, I've not seen this before, I wonder how this is going to work. I mean, that worked really well.
Absolutely.
So developing a bit, but so with learners, and if you're a trainer doing part twos, definitely bring it into the structure of the lesson, because it works really well, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
absolutely.
And particularly with PDIs becoming ADIs, as we all know, you have to look as far ahead as possible, you have to react as fast as possible, you have to see that kid in the bike before he gets on the bike, because you've then got to transfer it over to the learner. They've got to sort of not hear what you're saying because they're concentrating, then you've got to do it again, then you've got to take action. So developing that as a PDI particularly is really important, because it's just a huge skill. Forget the computer game bit, but on the road is a huge
You're
skill.
driving from the left-hand seat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you next go out for a drive, when you're allowed to, go click, click, and your kids are thinking, what the what's wrong with Dad?
Just a little point of note about the whole video game kind of culture that we're in, and how it's now linked, of course, to it being CGI'd, so that the vision, the image that our pupils are getting from the hazard perception is so crisp and clear. A few little things just to remind your pupils of is that because it's a video type feel to it, and it's obviously incredibly realistic and pretty good, it is computer generated, so there will be a few things that give that away. So for example, the pedestrians will walk just a little bit like robots, and I've had
Bad actors, aren't they?
and I've had pupils who have said that they almost get distracted because they're kind of looking at this kind of motion. But also they say that within a number of clips, the same jogger appears. You know, it's just like, we saw him, and that kind of thing distracts them. So it's the same man walking the same dog. So just to be aware that occasionally those repetitive computer bits of software can actually be the distraction rather than the hazard itself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got distracted by the dog.
I thought you did.
Yeah. So I think that's probably it. A short one. There's no need to sort of go on about that. So just go and practice it if you're in that situation yourself, and do it with learners in the car, following mirror. Well, not the signal bit, but mirror, signal, position, speed. It's speed, isn't it? So checking the mirror, coming off the power, applying the brake. That's the 3 clicks. The points are in the covering off the power. But you're doing the others, one to warm you up, the other one to cover you just in case you were slightly early. Okay.
We will have a think about what we're going to do next week. We probably will take Monday off, being a bank holiday.
Yeah,
Quite
we need
nice
a break,
to.
don't we?
I mean, it's Friday. I'm really busy. I don't know about you, mate. It is a bank holiday Friday at the moment, but there we go.
We thought we'd do it anyway.
So
take one for the team.
back on Tuesday.
Yep.
Don't know what we'll be talking about.
No, let us know if there's anything you want us to talk about. Or we'll talk about decorating the house or something.
Have a good weekend and a very happy Easter to you all.
See you later. Bye bye.